Good afternoon. Welcome to another session of Lifting Your Spirit, a monthly broadcast where we interview people about their spiritual lives and how they've shared that journey with others. I'm Reverend Joel Grossman, Interfaith Minister, Director of Spiritual Services with Constellation Hospice, and I also offer spiritual coaching virtually on a donation basis.
And I'm Ted Jones, meditation teacher at North Shore Insight Meditation Community.
Our show is based on the four following assumptions. 1, everybody is spiritual. Sometimes we're conscious and active in our spiritual lives, sometimes not, but even when we're not, we still have a spirit.
Second, that there are many ways to lift your spirit, not only through formal religious practices, but also through nature, art, human relationships, service to others, just to name a few.
Third, each person's spiritual path is unique and may change in small or large ways over time.
And fourth, that it's important to respect your own spiritual journey, trusting that it will move from one step to the next, and to respect the spiritual journey of others, even though they may be very different from your own. We're not here to convince you of the benefit of any particular method or practice, but rather just to offer some food for thought.
So I'm very pleased to have Vanessa Avery with us today. She's Executive Director of Sharing Sacred Spaces. She's a lecturer in Interreligious Engagement at Yale Divinity School, a Hartford International Executive or Professional Education Fellow, and former Senior Associate in Diversity with Cambridge Hill Partners. She has consulted for healthcare systems around the nation, including Rush-Presbyterian-St. Luke's, Eastern Idaho Healthcare Systems, Connecticut Hospital Association, and the Susan Komen Foundation, among others. Vanessa helps clients to develop their core competencies in understanding and navigating cultural and religious differences, thereby creating knowledgeable, compassionate, and thriving workspaces. Wow, that's a lot. So I really look forward to hearing more about those things, and as always, we start out asking if you'd share about your spiritual journey through life.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me, Joel and Ted. It's a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you for sharing the foundations of the show, which I enjoyed learning about. So my spiritual journey, I'm sure there's been a lot of twists and turns to that over the years. But, you know, I like to go back to look at how I grew up. I grew up in an extended conservative Jewish family household in Queens, New York. There were 8 of us under one roof, all from my mother's side. But there was my mother, her 3 younger siblings, there was my maternal grandparents, my great-grandfather, and we had a traditional Jewish home. My grandparents and great-grandfather spoke in Yiddish to each other. I remember striving as a young girl to learn the language. Still, my Yiddish is not very good, just a couple of phrases. Like it's time to go to bed and go to school and things like that.
Gay schlafen.
That's right. Exactly. But yeah, so a couple of practical things I learned from them. And our Passover Seders were always fun, very celebratory with extended family and friends. But our house was a lot like Grand Central. You know, people were always coming and going, and it was really a fun context in which to grow up. I learned a lot from my family about accepting people of all ages, of all backgrounds, just people, from my childhood house. And, you know, we had a huge spectrum of people who would come through. It was just the openness of my grandparents' house that was special, and a very, I think, a special way to grow up. You know, a little more spiritually, I guess, or more traditionally religious. One of my favorite memories from my childhood home was watching my grandmother light the Shabbos candles every Friday evening. And, you know, the way she did it was lovely. It was, she never drew attention to herself. I'm not even sure I'm not sure as a child I knew she was even praying for anything specific. It was just that she did it as a quiet and personal act. And I went sometimes with my grandfather to the synagogue, just he and I, and those were also special shared moments. I'll add to that, you know, and I had friends, we had a very diverse neighborhood, so my best friends were from all, their families were from all different countries, you know, India, China, Iran. It was a very amazing neighborhood. But there was another aspect I think that was really important. We had a family business growing up. My great-grandfather, Sussman Bettinger, had come over in 1904 as an immigrant from Poland and lived in the tenements down on the Lower East Side of Manhattan and got a push cart to sell luggage. After 10 years, in 1914, he opened a storefront called Bettinger's Luggage on Rivington Street. And he ran that. It eventually passed to my grandfather and our family. And, you know, since I was probably 8, 9 years old, I used to work in that store. But for people listening today, you know, if you didn't know what the Lower East Side of Manhattan was like, even if you know it today, it was like its own world down there, you know, back in the 70s when I was growing up. And it was the place to be on a Sunday, and it was packed everywhere because you would go to get a deal. A deal on anything, you know, for us it was luggage. And it was like this special world where it was busy and everyone was connected, and I knew all the vendors down the streets, and I would go and just get an egg cream, or my aunt would take me shopping and we would get a deal, you know, and it was just very special. And I think, you know, spiritually, what I take from that whole childhood is that I was part of this intimately connected world, where everyone was accepted, like in my home, but also connected in the outside world. And I have to add my mom, and stop me if I'm talking too much, but, you know, I add my mom to this mix because she was, I would say, less traditional, but more restless and curious. And as I was growing up, you know, she opened me up to a much broader horizon even. So in my elementary school days, I remember working on projects with her on the Greek myths. And then I remember I was maybe 12. She left me for an afternoon at a Zen meditation center in Manhattan where I meditated on a plank, you know, just like that I learned. And we shared meals at the Sri Chinmoy's restaurant in Flushing from devotees. You know, it was served by devotees. And
let me just stop you there, because I'm not sure everyone probably knows Sri Chinmoy, but he was a very prominent Buddhist teacher. Is that, if I have the right guy, I think?
Yeah, well, more in the Hindu vein, but there's a lot in common with Buddhism also. And yes, so she used to bring me to Buddhist spaces, but this particular it's still there in Flushing, Queens. When you walk in, he's one of the Hindu gurus, so which means teacher, really. But the way that he would use his mind to overcome matter was also instilled in me at this age, because when you walk into his restaurant, there are photos of him lifting barbells with weights that are unimaginable, you know, and that comes from the philosophy of his practice, you know, and I remember those images strikingly as a kid. So, and I should learn a little bit more even about what that particular sect of Hinduism was. But the devotees are in the restaurant, they run the restaurant. It's always fresh, delicious food. So, yeah, it was wonderful.
He's written a book called Sports and Meditation. He's a great athlete and marathoner, really help people to extend their capacities.
Absolutely, absolutely. The breath, I know just later on I learned more about the breath and its role in subduing pain during childbirth, for example, and it's incredible what you can accomplish that way. And
So I interrupted you. We had gotten as far as Sri Chimnoy's restaurant, and then we kind of then went down that track. But just in terms of your development, where did it go from there?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's that connectedness I feel to the world and to the different religions and to all the people, that I never questioned that I'd like all people to feel that special kind of connection and safety, as well as the joy. And, you know, my spiritual journey took a few turns, for sure. I went to, never questioned throughout high school. Everything was really just as it was. Religion didn't really occur to me as a thing. You know, it was just how I grew up in my own special life. My friends and I never even talked about it much. At college, I talked about it more. I was an archaeology major, but switched quickly after my first semester into religious studies, because I guess, well, I liked a professor in particular. There were several great professors, but I was just very drawn to particularly Hebrew Bible. I guess that was my own scripture, but it was really the exploration of Hinduism and Buddhism I started doing, and all of the different religions. I wound up in comparative religion there. And then I did a specialization.
Where was that?
I was at McGill University in Montreal.
Yeah.
They still have a fantastic world-class religious studies department, and Jewish studies department also. So I did several classes there. I specialized in Hebrew Bible after that at King's College London, and that was, you know, a British degree, so more concentrated, soup to nuts in 1 year. And then I came home. Took a couple of years to figure out what do I do with my master's in Hebrew Bible, and decided I should do another master's. So I went to Yale Divinity School, and there I did a broader master's in theology and literature. After which I said, now I have 2 masters. What kind of job am I going to get with this? Because I wasn't ordained and I wasn't going to be a rabbi. So I interviewed as many people as I could find, because this thing called cultural diversity training was just starting to take root. And I interviewed people because my question was, is religion part of this conversation? And the answer that all of those people told me was, no, we don't talk about that. They said, and I remember one answer in particular, they said, it always actually comes down to something other than religion at the core. And I disagreed with that. So I thought, well, I have all this knowledge. Let me see if I could help people understand how to work with religious people, and the different things that they need. So I started a business, and I just started from cold calling a whole bunch of companies, creating my own framework for training and teaching. And I did that for several years. Merged with Cambridge Hill Partners, where the folks at Cambridge Hill taught me some of the more managerial skills, if you will, for training companies. And I did the religion and cultural and international components of their training.
And that's where you met Jane, too,
That's where I met Jane.
who we've interviewed before.
Jane was a phenomenal mentor to me. Yes, absolutely.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about the sort of nuts and bolts of what you did with these companies. You know, sort of what milieu, what level of management, what kind of programming you were helping them with.
Sure. So I'll talk maybe more specifically about the religious components.
Yes.
So the first thing I always liked people to understand was, what is religion? Because it can occur as this thing, but really for me, religion, I always go back to the roots. And there are so many different definitions of religion that scholars will give. No one really agrees, but I just go back to the roots, and I say very simply, religion comes from roots that mean to bind. It's legare, plus that prefix re, which means again. So it's to bind again, or to bind back. And there's 3 ways that religion binds people back to their sense of divinity, or that sphere of God, or the holy. What's ultimate, right? The community. So religion always involves some kind of community, really. So how do we express religion to bind back to our community? And then to ourself. So what is our truest self, our most authentic self, the self that we feel purpose in and hope in? So those are the 3 spheres. So I talk about religion as really the expression of religion, and the rituals of religion and the beliefs are ways to bind back to those 3 areas: our self, our community, and our sense of reality, our cosmos, our God, whatever we'd like to call it, our ultimate reality. And it demystifies it a little bit, I think, for folks, so that one could see religion and religious folks in a slightly different point of view. A lot of the other things that we did in those sessions were looking at what are the points at which there could be a clash in the workplace or in healthcare settings, issues of modesty or diet or holidays or things like that. And I would usually have teaching components where I give some information about different religious traditions. And then we might do a case study for more advanced sessions where you would practice some dialogue and listening skills that were specific to working through kinds of conflict. So it progressed from more, brass tacks, informational challenge points and just knowing about those, to navigating them, which were more of the managerial and advanced level skills.
The way you've described religion is very beautiful and really captures the kind of a spiritual essence which we hope underlies religious practice. Having grown up a Catholic myself, and then having an uncle who was a Trappist monk for 75 years, it was very clear that certainly the Roman Catholic Church really veered away from those really core underlying spiritual qualities that he sometimes would joke that because he was a prominent teacher as well, that he's surprised he wasn't kicked out of the church. And I'm wondering, how that must have come up, sort of the sort of spiritual core versus the superficiality which has overcome a lot of religious practice in this culture. In many ways, we're no longer in touch with that. And what I hear you saying is part of your job that you were doing was to help get back in touch with those core values.
Yeah, I appreciate your saying that. I do think there's a difference between what religions are meant to be and what they become when clouded by politics and culture and, various agendas. And I mean, part of religion is it's so complex that it gets hard to extricate from all of those things. It's just embedded in our history and our cultures, and you can't just say religion is this, or, what was that tome I read for my PhD studies, which was, what is the essence of Christianity? Well, we don't really know as if there's just one, and all religions, I think, have that. So, but I do think, and I fully believe that the essence of religion as it was meant to be is pure and good and for the highest purpose of who we are. And I guess that's just my assumption, but that is what I believe, and the way that I teach it would certainly always cater to that, while I acknowledge all the rabbit holes that it's gone down to serve particular beliefs or agendas. And I would only add that I find the people that work with us at Sharing Sacred Spaces, because we work with religious congregations mostly, are people of deep faith who really do see the interconnectedness of people, or everyone is children of God, or whatever framework you want to put on that. It's easy to forget sometimes as you're moving through life, but I do think the deepest faith to me reveals that.
Yes.
So you mentioned Sharing Sacred Spaces, so if you'd like to share a little bit about what that's about.
Sure, thank you. Well, it's an organization. We build community, we build relationships across the religions, and really the outcome is a depolarizing effect and a undoing of bias, if you will, so that local communities can step into their higher purposes and serve one another. That's what we do. So we work in local communities around the country. Our hallmark program is called the Interreligious Communities Project. It's now volunteer-led. We're launching in about 12 cities in September, just next month. And 3 to 5 congregations in each city will be exploring one another's sacred spaces through site visits, as well as participating in an online training. So all the cities around the country will be with each other in the online training. And we move through different kinds of exercises and education to create an interfaith leadership network around the country.
Now,
So it's local, but it's also all together across. So we have a nice national community here.
Beautiful. Looking at the website, my sense is there's an emphasis on architecture, on the actual physical space. Could you say more about that?
Yes, and I should say thank you for that. Our founder was a retired architect, is a retired architect, Suzanne Morgan, and she also did liturgical design and came up with this brilliant idea of bringing people together through sacred architecture and inviting people into sacred spaces to learn about one another through the meaning that's in those spaces. So, there are so many ways to talk about the architecture. There's the kind of models that a lot of different sacred spaces adhere to. There's the history. There's the theology, which becomes apparent in how they're laid out and structured as well. So, for example, just in a synagogue, you will always find an eternal light. You'll find the Ark with the Torah scrolls, and you'll find the menorah. And why do we always have these in a synagogue? And you could have a synagogue anywhere, really, but if you go into any synagogue, you'll find those three things, because they harken back to the ancient temple that was destroyed, the second one in the year 70. But the memory is there, and the ancestry is there, and the connection to what Jews would call the Holy Land is there. So these kinds of connections and histories and meanings are just embedded in our sacred spaces. And that's a really, I don't want to call it a simple example, but, relatively short, simple example of what we can find. So we use architecture as an inviting point, come on in. And then hospitality is a foundation to that. So in addition to the programs we do at each site, we always share a meal in our interreligious communities that come visit. And, over the course of a year, it's a year commitment, we build wonderful relationships for local people to get to have gotten to know one another. So it's really quite a beautiful thing. People leave having learned a lot, but also feeling really hopeful for the future, which I know we all need. We just all need to feel hope.
And being an interfaith minister, going to an interfaith seminary myself, I and most of the people have found that the more you learn about other religions, the deeper you get into your own. So what you were saying about the purpose of religion is really enhanced by this interfaith experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the ways of exploring do open that up, and you learn more about your own and also the commonalities that you have. So, as I'm sure you walk into a Hindu temple, the impression of Hinduism is that they're polytheistic with all these gods and goddesses and idols, but that's not. But it's just an expression of the one ultimate reality that Hindus believe in. So these are just access points. So it's quite interesting to say, when we engage, we're exploring these diversities, but I know a lot of people really didn't know that about Hinduism. So when they visit the space, they learn, we're all monotheistic. At our core. Isn't that interesting? And by the way, you don't have to be. We have Wiccans and pagans in our programs as well who would not ascribe to that necessarily, but people find out things that absolutely open things up for them.
Yeah.
Differences and commonalities, and
And then touches on a particular interest of yours, non-dualism.
Yep. I'm curious about the sort of spectrum of different religions that would be represented, say, in a given city. I mean, and part of that is generated by the diversity within Christianity that is really very different from sort of the mainstream Christianity to the evangelical to the I've forgotten other name right on my, but you understand that very well, I'm sure. And then within Judaism, different congregations, and so if you could maybe, and you just talked about 5 spiritual organizations or churches or synagogues being involved, signing up for the year. But could you just sort of give us a view of who that might be, or sort of maybe an example of, well, in Memphis, here's what happened, or whatever?
Yeah,
the people
sure. Yeah, well, you point to a couple of interesting and important things too, which is the vast internal diversity within each religious tradition.
Yes.
So our hope is people do get a sense of that, but of course we can't represent all the different kinds of each religion in our programs either, not at least in the same year. So Dallas is our most recent graduate. I could talk about what happened.
Yeah, please. Great.
We had there, and traditionally we always had around 8 congregations, just for the record. In our new model with volunteers leading, we only ask them to have 3 to 5 because 8 or more is a lot to manage. It's like a full-time job. So our volunteers will only manage 3 to 5 moving forward. But in Dallas, we had a Latter-day Saints.
Oh, right, yeah.
Sufi Muslims, also Ismaili Muslims, 2 different groups. And we had a Jewish conservative synagogue. We had 2 Hindu groups. We had a Hindu temple, and we had a Chinmaya mission, which is more like a spiritual center rather than the temple. We also had an American Indian United Methodist Church that participated about halfway through and wasn't able to for the rest of it, but they were part of our community initially. And I think, I feel bad if I left anyone out, but that was our, the Presbyterian Church.
Yeah, okay, great.
I think I've covered everyone now. So that was, an amazingly diverse group down in Dallas.
Yeah.
They did great work. In Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C., we also had a Black Muslim group, the Nation's Mosque there in D.C., descendants of W.D. Muhammad's mosque, so the Black Muslims, or Nation of Islam as they call it, but they're no longer directly affiliated, but they do amazing interfaith work as well. We also had a Wiccan group as part of our Northern Virginia DC program, and then we also had a Jewish synagogue and a Presbyterian church. Some of them, we see in more than one place. So every city's been a little bit different, and we do strive for that too. We had Sikhs in our program in Stamford, which is always a treat because, the Sikh community feeds millions of people every single day out of their gurdwaras, where you could come and just be served your food.
Good food, too.
It's really good,
Yeah.
and it's just incredible what they do. So moving forward, our volunteer-led communities. So this looks a little bit different because every volunteer, I think, has their own vision, too, for what they want to accomplish. And we're in smaller towns and some bigger towns. So here in Greenwich, Connecticut, where I live, actually, we have a volunteer. And our town, is mostly Christians and Jews. And we have people of other religions who live here, but there's no mosque here, for example.
Yes.
There is a Hindu self-realization fellowship. That's private. But I think yes, I think there's a spiritualist church as well. And that's it for our diversity in terms of buildings. So our volunteer here is Methodist, and, just has asked the question, why am I Methodist as opposed to Congregationalist or Lutheran or Baptist or Episcopal? So it's going to be a different kind of program here, but I find that to be so interesting because so many people, I think, have that question as to what's the difference between all these denominations and why do we practice in the particular way that we are and why the split. So this particular program is shaping up to have a Methodist church, an Episcopal church, a Baptist church, and a Congregational church. And that's beautiful. It's a different kind of program, but it's perfect, I think, for where we are. And some of our other programs are in Dallas, so we have volunteers there. They just brought on a Church of Scientology to participate in the program. They're talking to the Baha'is to participate.
I was wondering about that, yes.
So you could imagine what our online training network is going to look like this year. Is going to be phenomenal. We'll have all kinds of people from all different religions able to learn and share with one another.
Beautiful. How long has this been in development?
The first pilot was run back in 2011 in Chicago. And that ran for 3 years by our founder. She was working with the Parliament of World Religions. And then there was a break. That Parliament director was no longer with the Parliament and went out back into his consulting career. I met the founder in 2017. We ran 2 pilot programs, and I did a proper evaluation and analysis of our results, and I said, this is ready to go, and we incorporated as a 501c3. And we found out in 2020. The date is end of 2019, so I usually say 2020. We're 5 years old. This was my vision from the beginning, was to have it scaled in local communities where it can be more sustainable, where you're building the leadership on the ground in each space. But I think I think the time is just right. People, I think, want to, we took off during COVID too, I should say. We moved everything online. We were in the midst of 3 different programs in 3 places, and we moved it online, but hundreds of folks started attending our programs online to learn about different communities. And I thought, wow, this is speaking to something in our culture that is, kind of hungry for this. They want the connection, and they want to understand people better and to be connected in ways that are more authentic and not pushing any agenda, but just learning and sharing and finding that deeper aspect of ourselves together. So.
And for our listeners and viewers, if they want to find out more, there's the website. So if you want to just mention that.
Sure, it's sharingsacredspaces.org. And if you wanted to contact us, I guess you can contact me if you like, Vanessa at sharingsacredspaces.org, or just simply contact at sharingsacredspaces.org.
So if there isn't more you want to say about Sharing Sacred Spaces, I'd like to switch to another focus of yours, and is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you talk about helping clients develop core competencies in understanding, navigating culture and religious differences. How do you help people in this way?
Well, that was part of the consulting work that I did for probably 15 years, and I still I still do it here and there, so it's a little bit of an arm of what we do here. But I think the training that I use is steady, whether it's for sharing sacred spaces or consulting clients, even though it's tailored differently to each context. But I do find that the ability to listen is one of the most underappreciated and underutilized skills that we have for navigating differences. And the beauty of that is you don't have to know a lot. You don't have to know about religious belief systems or histories or scriptures, or you just don't have to know. You just have to be able to listen in a way that is above, if you will, our lenses and our assumptions. And if you can do that, you can work with people and you can really understand what they need. And so that's one of the primary skills that I like to teach anybody that asks for our brand of training, which is learning to see your assumptions and learning to see the lenses that you approach people with, because we have lenses for everybody, especially over time. Like, look at your families, how many lenses we have for all the people in our family, so that we already know what they're going to do or say when we say something. It's interesting. And when we can actually put those aside, there's so much more that we can experience and understand about that person. So it's a fundamental skill no matter what room you find me in. I'm probably talking about listening. And from there, we'll, on a higher level managerial type skill, we would work on case studies, and we would, with corporate training, you include some of the legal aspects that I don't do so much anymore. But what's the point at which this is allowed in the workplace or not allowed in the workplace? And that can vary by corporate setting, but there are laws that govern that as well that need to be understood and paid attention to. In healthcare, there are a lot more things that I think do need to be taught in the healthcare setting because of how doctors and healthcare workers need to accommodate patients. So that is a lot more informational, I would say. Everything from who will accept a blood transfusion and who won't, to how to address modesty if a Muslim woman, for example, is seeking care, how to accommodate her and her needs. And then case studies are always helpful there too. There are a lot of very detailed, good case studies that can be used. So we work through those.
I'd like to return to what you were saying about listening, because I just agree so strongly with that. And what I'm hearing you say is to be fully present when you're listening, and to recognize when you're getting off track with it, when those lenses are starting to interfere. It's certainly in Buddhist meditation, for instance, the concept of mindfulness and moving toward living without distraction and actually being fully present in the moment. I'm wondering what practices you use to keep yourself grounded and fully present as you listen to people.
Well, I will say I find it just as difficult as the next person.
Yeah.
I'm
Me
just
too.
a smart rat. I'm just a smart rat that knows it.
Yeah.
So I think, I always say my work it's like my path for me, because it doesn't feel like work. And I so thoroughly enjoy the training and the teaching and being with people and sharing about what we see, that it's just a joy. What keeps me present is, I think loving the work just keeps me present. Really, when I'm working with my clients or communities, it is really just the work. I really think that's it. And just knowing that, my mind, or the voice in my head that everyone has, likes to speak and distract me,
Yes.
and that I know that I often can just put it aside and come back to being present, because nobody can just be present all the time. You've always got to manage yourself. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just doing it. And what do I do apart from work? That
Yeah.
I used to meditate. I can't say I do anymore. We are not particularly religious in a ritual sense in my home, but I do go out and do long hikes with our dogs every day if I can. The summer's been tough because it's really bad tick season over here. So we're taking a hiatus from the hikes. But come that weather below 70, I am back out there, and it resets me. It's great for the dogs too, but I do find it's necessary, and I get exercise, and that also calms my mind. If I'm not doing that, swimming calms my mind as well. The meditative, rhythmic activity. I like exercise as a way to be mindful.
When I'm teaching meditation to beginners, often I'll ask, what's your experience in meditation? And they'll say, well, I've never meditated. And then I'll say, well, is there anything you actually really like doing where you're actually fully present? And maybe they will say, I'm walking my dog, or digging in the garden. And I'll say, that's meditation. That's what meditation is. It's the art of being fully present with the moment that's right now in front of us.
That's really great. Yeah, I think that's great for people to see that they can do it too, because just sitting meditation is more challenging.
Yeah.
I think.
And it's just a small part of the picture. It's sort of formal meditation practice. What are we practicing for? To bring it into our day-to-day lives.
Right. I remember from the sitting meditation, and I always say I should go back to that because it's so profoundly awakening, if I could use the word, but what always struck me was when I'm practicing for a while, and I can't sit down and just do this, but I find that compassion for myself, like
Yes.
this body that I live in, that is me, and the compassion that literally moves me to tears when I used to do sitting meditation.
Yes.
And it's truly profound to me, and that, I would say, the mindfulness of exercise and things and that kind of meditation is so important. But then there's so much more when you take the extra step to sit and just breathe what comes up. I don't know if that's something that you experience or if you have people that do, but that always is the first thing that I remember from my own experience there.
Well, in my own spiritual practice, I think it's realization that at the core, it all comes down to love, and that's, just becomes deeper and deeper, and that you were referring to that, sort of the love that you feel in just doing the work, that's it right there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the Dalai Lama,
the love, for sure.
the Dalai Lama says, my religion is kindness.
Yeah, I think, yes, compassion and kindness. I guess I feel I work myself very hard. And so, at least then when I was meditating, I think that feeling of just feeling soft and vulnerable, right? Because you can go into the world and be strong and do all this stuff and take care of everything. And it's just that, oh, here, this is me. Just right.
Yes.
It's very valuable to slow down and feel soft.
So we are nearing our time limit, so we always like to end with asking what you could suggest to people that would help them lift their spirit.
Yeah, what a great idea. Well, I would say to people to know that your presence is one of a kind, and that your showing up matters. And I would encourage everyone to find a community where you can share yourself and continue your personal journey and feel your own dignity. And I know I hear a lot from our participants that we create sacred spaces, not just visit them. And if this is something that people listening are interested in, I invite you to just check us out.
Great.
But whether us or someone else, find your community, and your showing up matters.
Beautiful message. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing with us today, and hope people do make use of contact with you if this is inspiring to them, which I think is very possible. And we thank viewers for being with us, and hope you'll join us again next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Joel and Ted. Just a phenomenal conversation, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
Many blessings.
same to you.